Hi, I'm Jon Tsourakis with the Digital Mastermind. You're listening to The Climb. This is where agency owners and leaders tune in to get growth tips and strategies for growing their businesses. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the season finale of The Climb. This is episode 20. And in today's episode, we're going to reflect on the last few months and the last 19 episodes. So, Dave, overall, before we jump into this, what are your thoughts on how our season has gone?
You know, it's been awesome to see the growth of what this show can become. All the guests have been great. I've learned a ton. I hope a lot of our listeners have learned a lot. It was fun, just hearing all the different. I've taken away so many, little tidbits from everybody that I've felt like I've grown for participating. So, looking forward to even more.
I'm with you. I think this started out as an experiment to see what we could do, and along the way, we've had fantastic conversations. Like you said, we've learned a hell of a lot, and we've molded and changed it almost on, I'd say every 2 episodes. We kind of looked at it and moved on. So I'm excited to see what we come up with next.
Well, it was fun to listen to the episodes after we did them, and it's kind of self-critique. I think this is your first podcast. This is my first podcast. And, I almost became a fan of our show as well, and I enjoyed watching the quality of like our transitions, just everything about it has gotten better as we've gone.
It was like when a town gets its first intersection, it's growing.
Yeah. Your second stoplight.
Yeah. All right, so to get into some of the episodes, we started with you, which I think was funny, right? So we started with you, and I remember when we initially started, I was just going to do this, and then we went back and forth in a Slack. I already knew a ton about you, right? But then we decided, wait, let's just go ahead and team up in this. Unfortunately, I'm biased because I've known you. So my one big takeaway there is the number one site for Alien vs. Predator, because I think that was the most new thing I was, aware of.
Yeah, it's awesome. Hey, that was our test run, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it helped us, get down the format, and it was fun.
I just noticed we're both wearing pink today. Awesome, man! Look at that. I didn't even send a memo.
Yeah, I mean, it's season finale day.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so episode 2, we had Cameron Medill, awesome guy. One of the big takeaways there, I think it's in the heading too, is what it takes to become a B Corp.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It's a lot of feel good type stuff. What's that?
Yeah. The B Corp was like super interesting. How he's converting his business to a employee owned, how he's stepping back a little bit in terms of his hours. That was a just super interesting interview from my perspective to just learn all about that. I mean, I could never see going through that, but super interesting.
And if we look at the spectrum, right, I think he's on the forefront of almost like being that nonprofit not nonprofit, for-profit company, though, that is just doing the good work. And I love seeing that. I think our company, we have a lot of that, but we also have we're not that focused on that part of it. We're focused on a winning culture where we deliver whatever it takes for our clients, which in some respects is old school, but I love that. That's near and dear to my heart, and that's business to some respects, where he has a guy pedaling, 5 miles with compost on the front of his bicycle. Like, it's wow. Like that is remarkable stuff. And the whole company acknowledging that, aligning themselves and appreciating it, getting that certification. Super.
West Coasty.
But the irony is that he said, I think one of the best companies or the certifying body is here in Florida.
Interesting. That is interesting.
And then our good buddy Lee Walkner in episode 3. Some of the I love Lee. He's a hilarious guy. Some of the big takeaways there was I think aligning heart to heart. That wasn't one thing I was aware of their agency, and I like to see. It's good to hear that somebody's doing that. And it's not saying that they fire all the assholes, right? Because that's the extreme truth of that. But it's just looking for the types of companies that they want to align with, not necessarily taking on everybody.
So I love Lee. He's such a great guy. And, I know we got to talking about scrapbooking in one of these episodes, and Lee actually made my scrapbook, as well did you. And
Oh, man, that's awesome.
that picture of us on the floor in the office is
Yeah.
in my scrapbook for the year. So Lee's just fun. I mean, I love listening to it. His passion about his other stuff.
Yeah.
His writing,
Yeah.
the arts, how he
Got a
brings
playwriting workshop for 27 years.
Yeah. So it's, what it just comes down to, you really enjoy listening to somebody that's passionate about what they do. And he's super authentic. So great guy.
And one of the quotes that I took away from that I use now, because some people have accused me of being a workaholic and whatnot, but work gives me purpose. And that's when he said that, it was so encapsulating. It's like, yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
And I was speaking with somebody about that the other day. For instance, this is a good question, not necessarily even a tangent. If you were to build up a company, sell it for $50 million, what would you do with the rest of your time? Would you just kick back and not do anything?
That is a very good question, because there's a lot of part of me that says, yes, that's all I want to do.
No, that's a lie.
Right. Correct. But then I also know that after about 6 months of just, getting smashed at the pool in the Caribbean, that I'm going to be like, all right, I got to do something.
Right.
So.
And I think it's the story of a hustler. In fact, that's the, one of the gentlemen I was speaking with him on his podcast the other day, Taylor Trusty, about that. And I think if you're a real worker, that might be the dream and the lie that you tell yourself, but that's not the reality of the situation.
But I think what I would do is, if I had that giant chunk of cash, I would start a business in almost more of like a hobby arena. So I could see myself starting a sports agency, just because I love football so much. Mm-hmm. That's where I'd probably turn. Like I love what we do. I love coding and solving and creating software and solving problems. But sometimes it's not fun.
Well, like anything else. Yeah.
Right. So
but I think it gives purpose though, right? Like
course.
You love to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing. And
I couldn't imagine being someone that, dreaded their life and going into a job they hated. I've never really experienced that.
I've experienced it for times, but it's a matter of time before you make a change, right? Yeah. It's like when you think Steve Jobs said this, when you look in the mirror too many days in a row and you hate what you see or what you're doing, it's time to make a change.
Yeah.
And I've done that. That's actually why I left the other company and started an agency. All right. Episode 4, we had our good buddy Gabe in there. That was a fantastic episode. He had an agency of over 250 that he sold out in New York. The power processes, that was one of the big takeaways there.
Huge.
Yeah. I love how agency work is serious work.
That was the number one thing that I took out of that. Like, I love the process thing. We ended up creating and starting our process document, which I would say has been pretty revolutionary for us. So I love that. I mean, that was excellent. But to say that we do serious work and our clients expect it, I mean, that was just hit me in the heart. I was like, exactly, 100%.
And I think another big takeaway for people is the big accounts are attainable. You can get the accounts, and he explains it in that episode of how he's gone about it and how he continues to go about it.
Right.
And I checked in with his progress with his new agency, and they're doing great. In fact, I sat in on one of his meetings just to see how they do it a little over a week ago, and they're doing phenomenal.
Great.
Episode 5, good buddy Taylor Trusty. He's awesome. Love that guy too. One of the big takeaways there was be careful for what you wish for, right? He sold his agency and it wasn't everything he hoped it would be after. Kind of the thought experiment question I had on his podcast the other day that we were just talking about. Another big takeaway there, and I know you weren't there, you were in Costa Rica in retirement, a short retirement, as it was. But it can be lonely, it can be lonely at top, and in this business it can be lonely. And it's
100%. I mean, we merged because it's nice having a peer. The reason why we're in DMG, it's nice having peers. You can't there's our issues. Sometimes you can't talk to your right-hand man or your number one person in the company because
You
because they might just
shouldn't.
not take it right. You shouldn't, but they also will take it wrong. I mean, like
Right.
if I'm complaining about how much I'm paying everybody, or the stresses of making sure payroll gets met, that'll scare the shit out of them. They might start looking for another job.
Right.
So you need peers to be able to bounce those things off of. Because I mean, as a business owner, you encounter like scary challenges at least once a quarter.
Oh, at least. I was thinking about this the other day. Every industry has a COVID like scenario at some time,
Right.
right? For instance, when it was custom programming, it was people beginning to offshore work. There were people in there. This is their crisis,
Yeah.
right? You're the fax machine manufacturer and supplier. It's like the internet comes out. You're like, oh, that's your. Everybody has their COVID, and I think it's something that we need to embrace. So if you're not prepared for that, then I don't know what to tell you. I think that's the thing you need to look forward to. Like everybody's going to have their industry COVID coming.
Right. Yeah.
Went a little bit too far. I think I did there. Maybe I'll edit that part out. We'll see.
No.
All right. The Shannon Prager. That was another great episode.
Excellent.
Yeah. Women empowerment. I remember just being very apprehensive up to that, thinking, because I didn't know anything about it. Right. I mean, I don't think you did either. We just, it's not that we disempowered anybody. We just didn't want to come at it as two pricks. We wanted to be very thoughtful.
That kind of topic and that kind of subject matter for me, honestly, when I encounter that plus business, I get really apprehensive. Like, I don't like talking about politics in business. I don't like talking about
religion,
any of those kind of touchy subjects, because I'm just focused on business. I want to be able to do business with you. I want to be able to solve your problems and be able to work with you. And if I say any belief about anything that you're not aligned with, I've instantly turned you off. And I'm just not the one. I know people that are in business that, are very, think of like a Hobby Lobby, where they're like very out and open, a Chick-fil-A, like their religion is a big driver of their business. That's not me. It's just not me.
And they make chicken sandwiches that are so good that people across the line, completely polar of their point of view, will still go in there, get a sweet tea, a Chick-fil-A sandwich, and some of those waffle fries.
Powerful chicken sandwich.
It's incredible.
Not only that, I mean, so the Chick-fil-A by us is running 2 lines in parallel with cones outside. And I mean, they're basically just throwing your food into the car when you pull up to the window. I mean, it's incredible
Remarkable
how efficient they're operating right now.
So they block a main thoroughfare, 1 lane of a 3-lane highway, or a street rather, here in St. Pete. Like it'll go down like a few blocks into, because they don't have the 2 lanes and there's not enough space to do that.
But how fast does the line still move?
I think it moves pretty fast. I don't eat chicken. Yeah, I stopped eating chicken. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. What's that?
What do
I
you
eat
eat?
beef, vegetables, lamb, fruit. I don't eat pork either, really, for the most part. Actually, sometimes I'll eat pork, not really. Oh yeah, a very, a very Greek diet, absolutely. But yeah, dude, the price of chicken just doesn't make sense to me. How cheap it is, the antibiotics they put into it. Like, if you could just see how fast a chicken grows, I was like, I can do without it. And I was like, let's see what happens. So I took it out. I don't miss it at all.
Happening with your beef?
I don't. With beef, I believe it's a little bit different.
Okay.
I can tell you can't really tell the quality of 2 chickens, right? You can look at a beef and see the marbling. You can see a lot of those nutrient-rich reds in there. I look at a piece of chicken. I can't tell the difference between one that, was in, a coop, that was in a gang, that got tattoos on its face, versus the other one that was supposedly cage-free and it had one bad day and its name was Harry.
Not that I want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but they do add red dye to steaks to make them look more attractive in the store. Walmart's notorious for that.
I don't buy beef at Walmart. Anybody that buys beef at Walmart's not having these same opinions as me.
But for chicken, I will say that, if you're out on fast food, 100% correct. But when you're in the grocery store and you're looking at those chicken breasts that are just like massively gargantuan chicken breasts, then yeah, that's coming from like a, doped up chicken. But so my big thing is I love chicken on the bone and whole chickens and break it down myself. Like over the last 3 years got into this, I don't know, mantra of trying to get it down to the lowest common denominator of my food. The least amount of process. So
That's smart. That's exactly what I do.
yeah. So, but when you look at the whole chickens, they're like little baby normal sized chickens, because that's what you sell regular chickens for, and it's a much better quality, tastes better, and so I would just, if you give chicken another chance.
If I give it, I switched to turkey. So I replaced all the chicken that we would have with turkey. So I buy turkey breasts. You can get these at Publix.
Sure.
And way better. Like it blows away chicken. There's no turkey that you're like, I'd rather have chicken than turkey. So
Bono's, the local barbecue joint here, their smoked turkey is the bomb.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So that's I upped it a little bit, and so far so good.
Speaking of smoked, I just picked up a bag of lemon shandy pellets for my smoker that I'm excited to try this weekend.
And Lemon Shandy is our new sponsor here at the DMG.
Yes, Leinenkugel. No. It seriously sounds weird to me. It's like a summer shandy, lemon summer shandy wood pellets. So I'm going to smoke some chicken this weekend.
What is a lemon summer shandy? I actually thought that was the brand name. I had no idea what that was.
So Leinenkugel makes a summer shandy. And the difference between a beer like Blue Moon and a shandy is that Blue Moon which is like an orange wheat beer, is brewed with the orange in it. A shandy, the fruit is added after the beer is made.
Like, when did you have to have a fucking doctorate to understand beer? Like, how did it get so complicated so fast?
The craft beer nerds just completely
destroyed it.
They wanted to be like wine. I mean, they saw the wine snobs and they were like, I can do that too with beer.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, wine had like terroir, it's like the type of grape, like where it's grown. Like all beer is hops, right? Yeah. At the end of the day.
Not anymore.
No?
Have you ever had a sour?
No. I've tasted it. I can't drink them. I got a buddy that loves those things.
Love them.
Do you really?
Like drinking liquid Jolly Rancher. It's so good.
Ooh, yeah. No, I don't know.
So tart. It's like, it's good.
Yeah.
You can only have one of them. But I mean, they got chocolate beer now. I mean, they just have everything. It's everything.
I was crushing kombucha there for a minute, and I was wondering. I like loved it. I crush happiness. So there was like I drink like 4 a night.
Yeah.
And I was waking up the next morning. These like dark circles were under my eyes, and I was like, "What's going on?" And I cut it out. Yeah, it was a kombucha, man. It's got just loaded sugar. It's got caffeine in it. It's a little bit of alcohol, but I mean that wasn't the factor.
Right.
So that also went the way of the chicken. The roses, right? They were working systems and methods to profitability. I thought that was something, a big takeaway, where they've built their company, which is smart, right, around these tools, businesses and processes where they have like HubSpot, open book management, which whether it's like a method or philosophy, and they're big on EOS. I think they're a prime example of how you can take these tools and make them successful within your company and across multiple companies, because they've been pretty good at acquiring them.
So I've always had this theory, and I wonder if we should do some episodes, like go back and re-interview some of these people. But the whole open book management, I always felt is great in a good time, but how does it operate in a bad time when a business might be losing business? Is everyone seeing these numbers and getting scared, and are people looking for jobs? Like, I mean, all the benefits of open book management, I think, sound great as long as you're growing and the economy is growing.
That's great points. Yeah.
In a recession, what happens?
Right.
Because
like right now, what's going on? Because there's
exactly.
But see, here's the thing too. It's kind of weird. Like you got unemployment up to like 30 million or something, right? 40. Okay, you got 40 million. And how many people are out job hunting in a situation like that? So I'd love to see. I hope for them that it brings everybody together, right? Based on like, all right, here are our numbers. We're crushing it. We're coming together as a team to dominate.
But still, I mean, it's human nature, and everybody's looking up at the board, and then you have to report, hey, we're losing the Smiths, and that Smith project was $10,000 a month, and then everybody looks at the account manager that's managing the Smith account and going, ooh, you might be getting fired. That's the bad things. I mean, I know nobody will say it out loud, but everybody in their head are going to think, Ooh.
Or is it possible that they come together and they go over to the Smith's account manager, like, all right, how can we come together and help you fix
Sure.
this?
Sure. It could foster a tribe mentality that we're all in this together. Again, interesting social
I
experience.
agree.
I would love to see the results.
Episode 8, we had Carrie McClanahan.
That was fun.
It was fun. I love it when somebody says employees aren't family, because that's the truth. You can love all the people you work with, but at the end of the day, we're a team. And she learned that earlier in her career, and it served her well, right?
Yep.
Also, how to maximize agency revenue beyond profit margin, right? So that differentiation, the importance of that, where she was able to find her B2B tech niche, and she had 7 other companies that approached a buyer in there. She's, phenomenally successful, was able to then, sell her agency, where she got a coveted position in a very large growing company.
Right.
So yeah, super interesting though is how Cameron and her in the same city, right? That very
Right.
West Coast based city, where he's the certified B Corp. And I'd say she's more that corporate vein that is the win at all cost type of scenario. I shouldn't say win at all cost. That sounds really bad. But I say that the more traditional corporate vein.
Yeah. More traditional capitalist.
Yeah. I do like to say win at all cost though, because it's just kind of like a war cry, isn't it?
It is, but I mean,
it's not true. I don't really mean it.
Win at lots of costs, but not all.
Win it. Don't spend too much. Let's make this profitable. Jeb Banner, longtime DMG member, great guy. He purpose, really big on purpose. I remember the first time I met him, I don't know how long ago that was, years ago, but that was something that he was keen on, and he was able to do that with the product company that he built. The other takeaway from that conversation, I believe that's episode 9. Yeah. Episode 9 was don't try to develop a product inside your company and run that as a separate company inside your company. It's losing all around.
He was speaking to me. I think every company that's a service-based company wants to create a product because that is the escape from the rat race. If you're a service-based company, you're constantly chasing for projects. The product is the escape.
Mm-hmm.
So we've tried, but the clients always get the time. So it's impossible to dedicate enough resources to really launch a company. So it's so difficult. But another thing that I love Jeb brought to the conversation was get your team in a room and just start putting ideas on the whiteboard, and then they'll tell you what your culture is.
I forgot about that. Great point.
Yeah, I mean, don't try to tell your team what your culture is. Your team will tell you what the culture is. And I've actually passed that advice on to a local colleague here, and that's really helped them out. So that was
the best traits, right? So what are the best traits of the employees that you like the most, or that everybody wants to idolize or emulate?
Yep.
Yeah. Appreciate you bringing that up. That was a great one. Episode 10, our buddy Jeff Wilson, out also longtime DMG member out of Atlanta. Innovation starts with culture and strong leadership. That was a big takeaway there. It's not this thing you can be hopeful for. You have to have the intention to make that happen.
And I think the big takeaway for me, and I mean, it's a small tidbit, but impactful, is you're not going to get an enterprise level client unless you have a business development, face-to-face process. You're not going to get it with inbound. And I loved hearing that, because I've kind of felt that way for a long time, that when you go the purely inbound marketing way, then you are now the noise. You are now in the noisy realm. You have to really differentiate. And Jeff, which used to be in that, said, all right, we need to get boots on the ground at networking events, creating our own events, creating our own opportunities to go face-to-face with enterprise level connections. That's the only way that's going to happen. I was like, yep.
And I think the way to surmise that is you got to go and get the accounts you want. They're not looking.
Right.
They're not looking for
Googling.
Right. Yeah. And they might be getting information and whatnot, but there's so many people, if it's a marquee account, people selling into them, that's where your focus need to be. And he's taken a very communal approach, right? He's built this community, which I think is really smart, but then he's also got people selling into them. So I can't think of any better way than to put your arms around the account that you want than that. The Charlie Flax. Oh, I love that guy. He's hilarious. Yeah. Ball busting Charlie Flax. What's that?
Ball buster.
Oh, yeah, he is. Total New Jersey ball, yeah. I think he's proof of, the power of a niche. That's one of the takeaways there. Built Propeller, fantastic agency. And, strategy in action, not just action. Spend a ton of time in there, which, I pushed back on him because I think I'd rather take somebody. There's got to be action. I think that's the most important thing. Action in that direction.
Yeah.
Strategy is important, though. I don't want to discount that. And pony cycles are a thing. I had no idea.
I mean, if I tell somebody that I need something done and then they're just kind of, analysis paralysis and nothing's ever getting, you don't even get started. Like that is warning sign number one for me. So I loved that discussion. Yeah, that was a fun episode. I mean, just the New Jersey just came out of them and it was great. It's fun.
And that was the beginning of the coronavirus, right?
I think probably, that week people were like, hey, there's something going on in China.
Yeah, I think actually we just had cases here, if I'm not mistaken. I can't fully recall, but and that's kind of took over a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, rightfully so. I mean, it's top of mind. It's in everything. It was just incestuous. And that's where on episode 12 we had Nicholas Petrovsky, great name. And that's when we started talking about based on he was an analyst and a hardcore researcher, what we can do there. I mean, the insights to that are definitely, what can a company do, and the amount of cash flow that they can have on. I think those were good things that can be echoed. So there was definitely value in that. Episode and I'd like to have him on again where we're not talking about coronavirus, because looking back, where I think it's something that's a little bit more rich and meaty.
Don't you feel that you have to ask him about his predictions though? I felt like he was a little hyperbolic. It was a little too much scare.
But it's like the difference of calling somebody he's in a lockdown state, right? Ohio, right? And speaking with friends in LA or friends in Manhattan. I have a friend in Manhattan and I have a friend in Brooklyn. Everybody has a different lens that they're seeing this through.
100%.
So, I mean, dude, we're in Florida.
God, every day I'm in Florida.
I mean, it's so.
I'm being real. I think.
No, I know. It's insane. How I didn't miss one day of not coming to the office. Granted, we didn't force anybody to come to the office, but it's remarkable how down here is almost to normal. I was in a Chinese restaurant the other day, which in places their restaurants aren't even open.
Right.
And fantastic food. I don't know if it's the best in the country, but it's definitely the best here.
I mean, I was talking with my wife that we pretty much kind of, mutually agreed that we're not going to eat sushi or Chinese or any kind of weird food for at least a month after things open up, because I don't want a shady place looking at that freezer and it's been in this food's been in the back. Let's cook it up and see if we can sell it. Because I mean, there's a lot of restaurants that are going to have supply that's just been sitting there.
This is a high-end Chinese restaurant, right? And and granted, those shitty restaurants are going to do that. And maybe you could use your dirty dining to make that analysis. But I was thinking okay, everything would be normal, but if you panned the camera over to my left, a whole family wearing masks.
Really? So what's a high-end Chinese restaurant? Do you go to P.F. Chang's?
No, it's no. This is it's more higher end than that. You have not the place where they got the repeat menu. Everybody's got the same one. It's I don't know. They got lobster. It's the really high end, authentic Chinese food with kind of a French flair to it to some extent.
For the life of me,
here's P.F. Chang's. This place is here.
Wow, nice. Well, Jacksonville's terrible Chinese food. There's not one good Chinese restaurant that I've found, and it's coming from up north where Chinese food is awesome. It's very disappointing. I haven't had a satisfying Chinese meal in Jacksonville in 16 years.
Yeah, those are the ones that are in a plaza, a little strip mall, right?
I'm excited about Panda Express because that's, I think, the best Chinese food in Jacksonville.
Wow, that's sad. That's the low. That's like fast food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's better than walk and roll.
Yeah, or like China King, China King 2.
China
Have you
King,
heard of China King 3?
Super China King.
Yeah, the China Pearl.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
They all I guess they got the same marketing playbook.
yep.
The All right, episode 13 with Michael Gass. It was good to have him on
Excellent.
again. Conversation we've heard before, but I think our audience hasn't, definitely on positioning. But then again, I think there was some of that coronavirus in there, but I think some people can get some solid takeaways by listening to that episode to just understand his approach to positioning and where social media and content come into play for that. Episode 14 with Jason Rosenbaum. Fantastic. Definitely love that guy.
So that was like full on, lockdown. He's in New York in a skyscraper, and to get that perspective. I mean, so he brought a ton of great marketing and operational topics to the episode, but to be able to actually get into a little bit of the life in Corona in New York was definitely interesting. So
yeah, and definitely he would be looking at it through a separate lens than we will, right? Up there, everything locked down, way more cases than we have down here. I think there's like 67 in the county that I'm in, where there's over 1 million something people.
Even just on the normal DMG call that we just had recently that he was on, his tone was much more depressed than ours. Or
yeah,
it was, and so that, and a lot of people are starting to talk about now is the mental toll of this lockdown. The people that are, I don't even want to get into the dark stories, but there's a lot of that's going to be the next wave of stories that come out of it.
Oh yeah, sure. And there's going to be a revisionist side to it where people are like, "Oh yeah, I was on this other." And it's like, no, I mean, just tell the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because it's infuriating to me. But some of the great things in the episode talking about the distributed workforce. This is something that he's done, believe, since day one, right? So there were a lot of tidbits there, especially kind of going back into the processes where it's being very intentional and specific about why you use certain tools to communicate or to do your work, right? I think that was a big takeaway, and also how to keep culture alive when you're not in the same building. And that's something now that we've been experiencing as well. So, I mean, we're only a few months into it, and I think everything's fine. But I believe as we begin to change the way that we go about our work, where people don't have to come into the office anymore, unless, of course, there's a specific reason to, we're going to need a way to keep the culture alive.
4 people in the office today. It feels
got a packed house.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So, I got one here. Yeah, that's not a whole lot, which is fine. The episode 15, also Brad Edmondoa talking about the PPL and EIDL. Keep it on that vein of coronavirus, which they keep saying coronavirus. It's making me so fucking angry.
Why?
Just how much it's dominated. How much it is dominated, and the thing that I keep, it's a terrible thing that's going on, and I have a feeling that we had to reschedule our event because of it. And I don't like being reminded of it. It's like the high school bully or something. Not that I was bullied or anything, but it's there. There was still a bully in school, and just you don't want that around.
Sure.
But yeah, that episode is fantastic. Definitely time sensitive with the PPL and the EIDL. There's also some good tidbits in there. Episode 16 with Brett Cohen and Bill Gaddis from Imagine. One of the big takeaways there is I love it. They are super sales oriented, and they've been through multiple, we'll say, hiccups and waves in the economy. Sure. And it's just keep your foot on the gas, and just hands on the wheel, and just keep doing what you're doing. And you should survive, which we've done to some extent. And, I even brought this up on our DMG call the other day. Nobody that anybody's running into that is, I'd say, like, how can you sell in a time like this, or how can you market in a time like this? But here's an interesting coronavirus little fact. I read, I believe it was Ad Age or Ad Week this morning, that a lot of these brands have blocked any keywords that associate themselves with coronavirus because they don't want to be associated with it because of the different opinions that people have in the different areas, right? So if you're Bounty paper towels, I'm just using that. They didn't give that one as an example. You're not going to do any video pre-roll on YouTube or show up with anything associated to it in blog content,
Right.
for your ad, because you want nothing to do with that conversation.
Of course.
The odd thing though is the news stations, they continually talk about it, right? Because they feel that this is the narrative that they should be pushing. And granted, it's top of mind for a lot of people. So there's this offset in spending, not just because of what's going on, but because of what's being talked about of what's going on.
Yeah. All right. So let me tell you this story that's hilarious. So I'm on keto, so I'm looking for a low carb drink for Memorial Day weekend.
Tequila.
And Corona comes out with their hard seltzer, and it's 0 carbs. All the other ones are like 1 or 2 carbs, and so I was really excited. So we go to like ABC, and they don't have it, and we end up just getting something else. So next weekend, I have to run to the store before we go over to a friend's for a cookout. And I come back to my wife, and I'm like, hey, went to Publix, and I got Corona. She's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I told you I was going there to get it. And she's like, what? She completely thought somebody was infected with coronavirus, and I picked it up. And I was like, hold up, here's the 12-pack. And so, I mean, Jesus, Corona, the beer. I wonder if they're just going to straight up I wonder if they've had any discussions of changing their.
No way.
What didn't Nissan have a vehicle that only sold in Europe called ISIS, and because the terrorist group rose up, they had to completely scrap the brand.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different though.
Why?
One is religious hate that is human caused, right? Where we're buying yours, I mean, I don't think there's people that want coronavirus to go around the world. Now, how odd would it be if ISIS started buying Corona beer just to keep that message going, and they just wanted to spread the virus more?
So because of this virus, I now know Corona means crown, right? That's why these are called coronaviruses, because they look like a crown. Next time you go and look at a Corona bottle or their logo, you'll go, oh, shit, because their logo has a crown on it.
Yeah, I already knew that though. So
Did you?
Oh, yeah,
you're so smart.
No, it's just I'm on 330 days of Duolingo, buddy.
Awesome.
That's a hell of a streak.
Nice.
The episode 17 with Jim Harrison, conversation about creativity. So and I guess the big takeaway there is creativity can be taught and fostered. A lot of people, and maybe some extent, you kind of think you have it or not. And how many times have you had a conversation with somebody that says, oh, I'm not creative, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll throw out an idea. It's like they're priming it to this might suck. I'm insecure about this.
Yeah, defense mechanism.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but let me tell you.
Exactly.
What I would do.
Right. And I think I'm more in tune to that now based on that conversation.
My takeaway from that interview was that I didn't get to say anything at all during the entire interview. So I sat there and listened about how to do creativeness.
Didn't get a word in edgewise, huh? The episode 18, Rick Carlson from Sharp Spring. The great conversation. Definitely there was some coronavirus in there, as with a lot of these others that I mentioned. And my big takeaway, because I started getting toward the end of this list, was tools should never lead the strategy.
Correct. Too many people think tools are magic.
Yep.
I want to know what is to the right of his monitor based on that interview. He kept looking every question. I'm like, what is he looking at over there?
What I assumed, now that you mention it, didn't think about it until now, is he had another screen with a Slack feed or
probably
some type of message in there. Or it could have been a publicist that was like, don't say this, and this.
Right. No, but I mean, look, I love the fact that they're actually sharp spring. They're actually going to put in that logic, that engine into their own product to help marketers get the most out of the platform. I mean, that's pretty awesome. And it really is kind of like, marketing automation for dummies. We experience it with our own implementations. There's so much to it that you can't just do it all, and you need to be very focused on like, what are we achieving for this customer, and how, and then here's the best ways to do that. So
Yeah, it's like a saw and a hammer. The wood isn't just going to build itself. It's the same thing with your message. You really got to craft your message. You got to make sure that the thing's at the right place. They have like a live chat tool that, okay, well, you have to go through all these thought-based scenarios of where it's going to lead that conversation.
well, it's just, that reminds me of, what was it, 3 years ago at DMG? Wasn't chatbots like the greatest new thing everyone was talking about?
Fucking boner time. Everybody was like, chatbots, chatbot, chatbot.
Yeah. And then, I mean, who's got a chatbot today? I mean, now it's just humans.
Drift, I think, has made a pretty big head. I mean, there's some places, but you're never going to kick more ass than having a human pick up that phone, pick up
100%.
that message, respond immediately. That whoever figures that out is going to win. If you have such an influx of business that makes sense, I think that's great. But
The chatbot today is nothing more than a phone menu system to try to do like phone bank. You know, you always hit 7 to speak to a
Yep.
you know, associate. You know, I'm never going in and trying to do bank anything with the menu.
no, and you could just Google like how to get to a human, enter in that company,
Yeah.
customer service.
2157.
Yep, and they're going to tell you. There used to be an app I had that would just do it for you. Like they had the prompts preloaded with the phone numbers. I'm not calling customer service as much anymore. We have other people that help us with that. But yeah, I agree. And I think, all right, is that the future? How do you
Live chat is the future. I love live chat.
That's what I'm talking about. But you have a human. If you have a human on the other end, yeah, I had a friend. She made tons of money doing sales over live chat for a software company.
Sure.
And it just transitioning them, teeing up that lead, teeing up that conversation.
So my funny story on that is recently Adobe had a major outage with their sign-in. And so I went to their at Adobe Care, sent them a message. I'm like, hey, this is not working. And this was before even like the mass public started complaining about it. And they were like, hey, we're working on it. We understand. And sent me a link and said, you know, we had identified the issue. I'm like, all right, thanks. And I'm like, is there any way you can, you know, send this license, you can add a license to my account for me? Like, no, I can't do that. But here, you can go to their live chat and they'll be able to do it. So I go to the link and I try to use it. And you have to be signed in to be able to do live chat. And so I
Fatal
can't
flaw.
log in. So I go back to Adobe Care and I'm like, ironically, you've got to be logged in order to use this. I was like, thank you anyways, but I'll just wait for it to be fixed. So,
And they were like, thank you, sir. Bye. Yeah.
No, they said, well, you can call. And I'm like, nah.
No, that's it. That's where you draw the line.
I mean, turns out I invited this employee to have a license 6 months ago. So when I finally got access at like 4:30, and I've been waiting since 10 a.m., turns out I didn't even need to do it.
That's infuriating.
Yeah.
Wow. I have that damn Adobe thing that runs on my computer to make sure that my software is live all the time. So
Yeah.
I take it that they didn't install that.
Nope.
The episode 19 with Amy Foley. That was a fun conversation. She was fantastic. In some respects, we do a lot of outsourcing as well. We white label our services for agencies and other companies that, you know, want to sell what we do. And she reiterated something that I don't think can be said enough, is outsourcing is all about managing the expectations. If you're super clear of what they are at the forefront, through the process, and at the end, you will continually get business from that account.
Sure. I mean, the conversation, I don't think was so much more about, I guess when I hear outsourcing, I hear something different than everyone else. I mean, outsourcing, I guess.
Well, yeah, you got your dad's situation. So you got scar tissue there. Like, I don't have that. So I think it's outsourcing. One source going out here is outsourcing.
Correct. So, yeah, I just think of something different. But you're right. I mean, so I kind of 10 years ago decided to start calling the economy the specialized economy. And I think it's spot on, because go back 15 years ago, every company was trying to do everything in-house. Marketing, sale, everything. Maybe go back 20 years. But most companies were trying to do everything themselves. And slowly they started to use specialized teams like an Oyova for development, a Revital for marketing. I mean, it started using much more outside specialized teams. And I think as we continue, that's going to be nothing but more of the status, or more of the, like the default is where a company is just really going to be a unique collection of specialized teams to achieve a certain goal.
I agree. I think a lot of that's because of the internet.
Of course.
So that speared the way. Just other companies just weren't knowledgeable of it. And I think outside of that, you had accounting that was probably always, handled by somebody else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, accounting always was an internal function. HR, always an internal function. Now you have outsourced HR companies. You have outsourced accounting, outsourced marketing, outsourced development, outsourced
fractional
IT.
CFOs. We have fractional sales. We have fractional marketing officers. And I think, it just depends on what makes sense for your company. And at the end of the day,
outsourced, what's the company we work with that does fulfillment? Outsourced fulfillment.
Oh, yeah. eWorld.
Yeah. So, I mean, you literally could probably have a one-man company that is doing 50 million in sales. One woman company.
I'm just thinking of the reporting for that and what that looks like. Because if you tie up everything, that's totally possible. You can create that 4-hour work week, to me, which sounds like a fucking myth. Yeah. But I think, you could do all of these things, have the accountabilities in place, but what you do for that limited number of time when you act better be super intentional and limited mistakes, because you have this many lines. You make one bad call at the top as it drips through all this. It can be super dangerous, and you got to align yourselves with the right partners. There are too many companies out there that are just, they don't have that genuine give a damn necessary to be a partner. And I think it's really up to certain companies, and there's no certification. There never will be for this. Of course, you have reviews, which our Clutch reviews right now are looking amazing. I might mention that. But I think it's going to be up to those types of things for companies to really vet to see how that company performs. And I would love to see an economy that was more like this. Even ourselves, like if we could find things to outsource more so, because even what do we have really that we outsource? We don't really outsource too much, right? Our payroll.
Not really. I mean, we have some. I mean, a payroll company processes it, but I mean,
but we don't really outsource much.
No, just a little bit.
We've tried though. I mean, we work with a handful of contractors and freelancers, so I mean, we have that insofar as our workforce.
Those are more like specialized needs here and there, though. That's not even like
video. We're always looking for good video partners, video editors, things like that.
I think.
Speaking of which,
that we don't have a consistent demand for. We're not gonna, bring that in house.
That's true too. And I'd also say the way that we function, if we don't have a consistent demand for something, because we do a whole hell of a lot of things, right? We have a very wide, experienced, hybrid team that can work in a lot of different things. But if it's something that's so nuanced and minute, we're like, there's no point of us even investing anything in that little itty bitty area for that CRM that 4 people in Tahiti use. And it just, that project doesn't make sense for us.
Tahiti press.
Yeah. What's that?
Tahiti press?
Tahiti press. Yeah. Tahiti press. And I guess, all right. So now we're up to episode 20. We're in the middle of that. And I think we're based on what we've learned in this episode and where we're going to go. We're going live. We've made that distinction.
We're going to more business focused.
More business focused. We're not going to say try. That's a weak word. Going to remove that. We're going to provide more educational content, more how-to based things where we see fit, and engage our audience more. And I hope that's what we're going to get from that live thing. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, more tools. How do we do what we do?
Yeah, let's get a couple trolls. Let's make it real. All right, cool. We get a hater in there, and
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Season 2 wish list. Get a hater.
Yeah, I love a little conflict. I love a little debate
on the internet, and you have to have a troll to make it in the internet.
I agree. And until you have that, it's like a lawsuit. Right. Until you have to go through that scenario, it's kind of like a rite of passage, a notch on your belt. But man, they're just, speaking of trolls, there is just so much going on right now on everything that's going in the world. I think it's part of these people being cooped up some of the hate that I've seen for comments just in some people's Instagram posts. I'm like, what compels you to just like power those things into your keys? It's just, how is not somebody meeting you at your front door with a fist right into your mouth? Because that's what would happen if you were in a lobby of a DMV or a hospital and you just said that thing to the person next to you. There is no way that they would be able to restrain from just putting a can of whoop ass, snapping it open and just beating the shit out of you. Just,
So,
ugh. And one more point to that. I think everybody at one point in their lives, there is a designation or certification where they have to be punched in the face. Like that should be something that everybody has to go through, knowing that pain is out there. Yeah.
I mean, I've been punched in the face many a times, and it's like the shot of adrenaline that instantly just, it's like, it's the best.
Yeah. And you don't want it to happen again, right? You know that's there.
Like hell and make sure that doesn't happen again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, how do I craft my life from not feeling that pain?
Right. But here, so I've got a really good friend that super political. He's a Bernie bro. Really wanted Bernie Sanders. So he's really socialist. I mean, he has a bunch of fancy names for what he calls himself, like anarcho-anarchist or I don't know, whatever. He throws terms at me left and right.
Initialisms, huh?
Yeah. So he said to me, and I fearfully believe him, that due to this financial issue that the coronavirus has caused, combined with the 2008 financial collapse, we now have 2 straight generations of young people that have been completely screwed over and their job prospects are just terrible, which is going to lead into the ushering in of a political party change. You know, the United States is going to change because we now have 2 back-to-back generations that are going to be far more slanted towards socialism than any other generations. And I believe it will, you know, within 20 years, it's going to be hard to stop it.
There's a lot of credence to that. I think there's a lot of levers and mechanics that can go into place to stop that. I think the thing that has been a helper and a horrible component to all those downturns are banks. So if we, like the CFPB, which was a thing at one time until it got dismantled, is now.
What's the CFPB?
It was the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, the CFPB, I think it was, or something like that. And it got dismantled, but that was a control mechanism that was in place to stop usury lending, to make sure that there were the right practices, the right people should get money to make sure that they could get deferments and all of these other programs. Well, when you remove that type of layer of regulation, and I'm not a huge person that's all into regulation, but I believe there need to be checks and balances, and that is a necessary one. Without having that, then yeah, this is going to get out of hand, because that's one of the nastiest things, that they take people's homes when they shouldn't. They harass people. Suicide rates go up when people go into debt. I think if we can figure out a component like that, I think we can, as Americans, we can get out of this without becoming a socialist country in 20 years.
I mean, I think we need to identify monopoly, and you know, we have laws on the books. You know, Bell South was broken up, and that was what, in the early 80s, or actually it's called Bell South. Oh no, wait. That doesn't make sense because it was all right. But yeah, and then it got broken up into all these different.
It was like Bell Communications or something like that.
Yeah, Bell Communications. So Bell South was one of them, and you know, they created a bunch of bells. Bank of America should be, just because they have one other competitor of JP Morgan Chase, that's basically 2 monopolies that look the same, but I mean, they control the market. Right. When somebody controls the market, we should not allow that. So break them up into 7 regional banks. There needs more. Also, you can't have every regional bank borrowing from Bank of America, which just borrows from the Federal Reserve. Then that just gives Bank of America all the power again.
Right.
Again, a monopoly. I mean, it's so.
There is no consumer outlook regulation on banks. There's business outlook, right? And business protections, right? Like, oh, we don't want this to happen. Well, we want to keep inflation here. We want to keep our dollar here. Like all those mechanisms in place. But the consumer, doesn't know which loan is bad for them. You have 80 pages of fine print. Granted, that's an exaggeration that you have to sign. But if you're going to go and buy a car that's going to be defective, they're they're going to pull it from the market. But they're not going to pull a loan that's going to entrap everybody.
When's the last? If you go through signing a mortgage, you sign probably 15 statements that say you understand the risks for such and such. You understand the APR. You understand this. Nobody reads that shit and just sign.
They don't.
You do know a DocuSign now, and in the user interface, flies right by the text and just click on that sign. I mean,
yep.
And also, if you just understand how humans work, it does not matter how many safeguards you put in place. If they want the Corvette, they're buying the Corvette.
Okay, well, here, let me flip it, right? So if 4 out of those 5 Corvettes are bursting in flames or wrecking, they're going to pull that from the market. If 4 out of the 5 of those loans are failing, they should pull that from the market.
So you're
giving money to people that should not have that money.
100%.
Right. Okay. Well, but now you're going to hit them with all of these, all these interest rates and all of this, debt compounding that you're going to now come after them with, when you can literally ruin a kid's life because they had some college loans. Okay. Yeah. Those are failures that somebody is profiting on. And I'm a capitalist. I like business, but if we're going to help our country, like, those are the things that we need to manage, because debt, whether it's on our political leaders or whether our youngest kids in high school, is not understood.
Correct. And I think the big problem with school loans is when you apply to get a school loan, for the most part, that's a pretty standard loan that the government backs.
Private. I had private student loans.
The problem is when the other companies, the vulture companies, come say, hey, consolidate your student loan, save money, here's a free t-shirt. And then you consolidate your loan, and all of a sudden, that's where all the traps are laid, because you're no longer in that safe world of a government-backed student loan. You're just really in a loan.
Right.
It looks more like a credit card.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have all these predatory things that happen in that place with people's money, which you need it. That is one of the biggest resources that we have. And fixing that in our country and culture, I believe, would have huge ripple effects. And then we can focus on things of being an over-litigious society, right, in all of these other areas. Until we fix that money problem, we're going to continually do this.
Is going to be university and colleges. Is going to be a giant collapse. Did you hear what Elon Musk just said yesterday?
No.
Oh, he came out.
Solar-powered universities?
Yeah, he said it's a piece of paper. It's worthless. I wish I could just look up the instant quote, but look it up. The biggest thing I see coming is the 4-year university is toast.
Good, because there were some worthless classes that I took that I honestly didn't get anything out when I went to school. But with that said, what is the certification, right? We don't need them based on our positions, of course. Yep. But, and granted, we say like, oh, yeah, we run companies for 10 years. So there's that, and somebody can see the longevity and check that out. But what is the certification for other companies to understand that somebody is capable of doing it? Is it just OJT and testing?
I mean, in our world, in technology, I always say it's, show me an example.
Same thing with marketing. Like, all right, what have you done?
Yeah, and if you aren't getting paid for it, you better have some hobby projects.
Yeah.
And if you can't show me a hobby project or something you just did for fun while you did learning, then you're not passionate about what you're doing.
Which, this is interesting, right? So in socialism, right, there's a very union-based type of system with journeymen and things. So this kind of plays into your friend's narrative. Getting rid of these universities and certificates, you're going to have this work program with all of these companies where you can see, who's done what and where.
He described it as basically dropping all of government, and things are going to be organized into working groups, which, the people own the means of production. And I just challenged him. I said, all you're doing is replacing one form of authority for another. It's just in a different shape. And instead of calling it government, you're going to answer to your working group. And your working group is going to make decisions.
Yeah, he's like talking about like the 17 and 1800s. That's not going to happen.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah. Okay. But what I'm saying is more of their, it's like a union-like structure. Doesn't necessarily mean it will function exactly like one.
But
But
you're creating a form of government in addition to everything else. I mean, the union itself is a form of government.
yeah, you could say even a company is a form of government, right? You have multiple structures and checks and balances in there as well.
Right.
But that's interesting. I would like to see. Yeah, I think universities in the ivory tower and how much they charge, and that Harvard has, $41 billion endowment, and not just picking on them, but there's all these companies. Or I'm sorry, they are companies, right? All these colleges that are, federally and state funded, where it still costs like 20, 30, 40 grand to send your kids there. It's like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, how are they going to pay that off? You're just being nice to your kids.
Right.
They're not going to pay you back for that.
Or the state schools are hiding it. So they'll have a nice cheap tuition that's like $3,000 a semester, but it's $5,000 for living on campus. There's a $700 food. There's a $600, they add all these things, and then you're really talking about, it's like $15,000 a semester. It's insane. I mean, I feel very fortunate. I escaped secondary education with only like $16,000 in debt.
Good for you. I don't remember where I was. It was through Bank of America. They were private loans, and we had it got a little bit nasty there toward the end, but we got it all figured out.
What age were you when you paid it off?
31. I think it was 31.
Yeah, I think I was 32. And when I paid mine off, my parents rewarded me with giving me their loan that they took out for me to go to college. So I had to pay that off.
Yeah, my parents could care less about me going to college. In fact, they didn't want me to go because they wanted me to work for the family business.
You have siblings. Are they older or younger?
One older, one younger.
So because I was the younger sibling, my sister was able to qualify for all this financial aid, all in her name. But when I went to college, my dad, it was Y2K. My dad was making bank. So I couldn't qualify for all that,
That's exactly why I had to get private loans. Like, I remember there was this whole checklist of things, and the lady at the front office, she said, like, have you ever been in like prison or jail? And I was like, no. Like, would that disqualify me? She's like, no, you could probably get some funding for that. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, literally, I fit nothing being, where I was. Yeah, it was the same scenario. No funding, and it was just, I don't know. That's an infuriating situation to be in, because your parents make just enough where they're not going to pay for you.
Right. Yeah.
But I'd love to see that change, and I'd love to see what that can do for not only our country, but all the companies, all these people just hiring and creating these training programs for their staff.
Yeah. Apprenticeship is the way to go. The most efficient use of everyone's time. On-job training. In your career, I don't need a well-rounded liberal arts degree. I need to know how to program. I want to be a software developer. I don't need Spanish. And that goes with, if you want to be a DNA scientist, you don't need to know about library sciences. You don't need to know about geology. And
they may help, right? Like, I took a geology class, which I enjoyed in college. I thought it was fantastic. Of my sciences, that was one of my favorites. But there are things that people now have with the internet that they're going to foster their interest and be well-rounded in it. I guarantee some of my Adderall-laden colleagues that took classes with me can't remember a fucking thing about the geology class we took.
So you said you enjoyed it.
I did.
But you're only evaluating your emotional experience of taking that class. Now, if I were to present to you, here is this fun geology class that in the long run, you're going to end up paying $7,000 for, because you're going to be paying interest on that semester credit for the next 20 years. Is it as fun? Were you glad you had some fun? Or would you have that $7,000 back?
No, trust me, if I was in school and I didn't have to take it, I wouldn't have taken it. I would go back and still not take that class.
It's just like mortgages. So right now, when you fill out a mortgage, they say, for the life of the loan, you are going to pay this much in interest. They should do that for every class in college. It's going to like, this costs, 2 credit hours. It's $2,000. And on a standard 20-year school loan, you're going to actually end up paying $4,500 for this class. Do you agree?
I think that's a great idea. They do something similar, or they're supposed to do something similar, I've heard, where they'll take your job of what you're going to get, right? Let's say that you're going to become a social worker, which social workers are super necessary in our society, right? They're
Sure.
thoroughly underpaid. They get a master's degree.
Yep.
They go to like a school like Williams and Mary's or something like that, right?
Terrible.
Where they're doing like the good work. They're paying like, I don't know, their degree costs like $300,000 at the end of the day for 6 years of school. And then they're going to make $43,000 for the rest of their career. If, they could maybe go up and get to 60
Sure.
or even 100, but when you spread that out over, like that debt is going to weigh them on. Nobody, like that school should not even offer that program because it's literally like, fuck you. Like we're going to give you this and you're never going to get your money back. Like that's not good business.
It should be a business decision.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. People aren't educated on the debt necessary, right? Our society and those business skills, and that's on the school. Like that.
That's on
and I'm not trying to create a. What's that?
That's on your high school. Your high school should be preparing you for that.
Your high school should be preparing you, but also the university to offer a class that is going to, like you're saying, potentially cost, I don't know, at that school $20,000, $30,000 to take, and that's. You're not even going to make that much, your first few years out. That, like, to me, I guess I don't understand that. Maybe I'm getting too ethically and morally involved in it. But I could not teach a class where I'm like, yeah, guys, like literally, you're all wasting your money here. I hope you really enjoy what you're learning because that's it. It's just, fruit of knowledge.
This topic is really close to me because I love talking about this. And to me, this story is the perfect way to explain my political stance, which is very libertarian standing and limited government, because it shows you perfectly that where government gets involved, costs, it gets less efficient. So colleges, before student loans were widely available, had to be priced in a manner that people could afford to go. Once student loan money, aka the government, decided to say, hey, here's an easy path to spend money, tuition costs have skyrocketed because universities, which are businesses, say, hey, these kids have an easy spigot to money. We need to raise our costs. You could look, it's sickening the speed at which the cost of tuition has risen, where you're not getting a better education, you're not getting anything more for it, only simply because the government has decided to enter the market, change the rules, and open up the floodgate for the universities to do a money grab. And that is the perfect, storyline that I like to use, that where when government gets involved, things go haywire. And it's true.
I think it's a good example of it. But I mean, and I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate. The government getting involved, like having a police force or a fire department, like those are necessary things that, granted,
local government, it's not really the same thing. I'm talking about federal government.
Okay. All right. So let's say you have federal
local
government
services are required and needed.
Right. But let's say on the university side, but what about like healthcare, right? So all healthcare is essentially placed around the Medicare level. Why don't we have a list for classes that are essentially like, no, this is all the government's going to pay for that class?
Medical is a perfect example because the government has so much regulation around medical, anything. You got the FDA. That's why every other country is getting pills and prescriptions at a fraction of the cost that we pay here. And because the government has put in all of these regulation safeguards, I mean, it just incentivizes, plus, force, the insurance game on top of that allows companies to bloat the hell out of the cost. Because, for example, I'm at my doctor's office and there's a sign on the door while I'm waiting for the doctor that says, if you're planning to pay direct, the price is moving up to $100. All people paying with insurance, nothing's changed. How the hell is there two different costs for the
Yeah.
exact same thing. You have to know there's corruption there.
That is corruption. That's if you pay cash, I can go to my dentist and I'll pay like 50% when I pay cash.
I sprained my ankle, and so my health care coverage, I haven't reached my deductible. So that means I'm going to have to pay out of pocket. So I have to buy a boot because I can't walk, and literally sat me down and said, okay, we can run this through insurance, but you haven't reached your deductible, so it's going to cost you $260, but that $260 will be applied towards your deductible. Or we can just charge you outside of insurance, and we'll only charge you $120. It's more than double if they go through insurance than just selling it to me directly.
Why do you have insurance?
For the catastrophe. I mean, I'm going through that with I told you a long time ago about the exterior wall at my home.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm thinking, why the hell do I have home insurance? And I'm thinking about dropping it. But then, then a hurricane comes by.
I have a friend with, it happens, right? I guess that's but even if a hurricane comes by, they're going to hit all the other houses. You're still not going to get paid for 2 or 3 years anyway.
I know. So the system is like, what? Crazy.
But the odd thing, though, all those points are accurate, but we're still the leader when it comes to innovation, technology,
we
healthcare,
create everything,
and all that is driven by market, right? How many other
need?
What's that?
Need. It's driven by need.
Well, that's a market, isn't that?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So, but let's say like all the pills that you mentioned that they're selling in all these other countries, like they're not banking on those other countries. They're making some money from those other countries, right? If there's fallout from this country, they would rethink their game plan completely. So it's hard to change the rules when all the rules were built around what we created.
And one of my favorite comedians, Bill Hicks, one of his favorite lines is, there's somebody that wants to change the ride and everyone else is on the ride going, shut up, we're invested in this ride. Don't change it. This is my ride. There's so many things built upon these rules. And if you change it, that's why you have protesting in DC. I mean, if you try to change anything core about the norm, it just can't happen.
Yeah. No. And I like to see the changes, though. I think change is good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. When we started talking about these topics, because you said currently right now we're in some like strange times.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think the country is healthier today than it was 10 years ago.
Healthier how, though, dude?
Mental state, interpersonal, respect.
Do you feel better than you did 10 years ago?
Fuck yeah.
There you go. I think it's just you having that core understanding. Because I'm with you. I
personally have grown and done amazing things.
Right.
I'm very happy with my 10 years.
Exactly.
But I feel like everything else externally is degrading.
Yeah, see, I would disagree because I think you had like Occupy Wall Street and all these like horrible things that were going on before. Everything is exactly the same as it's been to some respects.
Sure.
And there's just there's a little bit of shifting in some of the areas, but for the most part, we're playing the same game, and it just feels different.
Social media gets it public so much easier now. I mean, the trolls online, the disrespect.
Yeah, sure.
But now I feel like that disrespect online is bleeding out into face-to-face world.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I would agree.
It's not good. I don't know.
Yeah, and I believe that part's different, but that in itself will also have a state of correction. It's just that's what's new right now, and I think when people have the ability to reflect on it, it's like a trend, right? Everybody's like, oh, this is what's happening, this is what's cool. And before you know, it's like, no, it's going to go to the wayside as a human behavior. At least that's what I believe. And on that note,
let's wrap it up.
Season 1 finally done. Putting a bow on it.
Do it.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.